put on the window.
And those were the things that were prized. If you were considered a really intelligent person, you were just celebrity at the time because I used to TVs around. Jonathan Swift, the author of this essay, was known as being a member of the intelligentsia. He was recognized as a satirist. He was known for it. Even if you know nothing about English history, I'm sure at some point you heard about the Whigs and the Tories. That was going on during this time period. When his buddies were in power, he lived in England. And they liked him because he mocked all of the people they didn't like. However, when his friends fell out of power, and all the people that he had been mocking and criticizing took over the government, he had to leave and go back to Ireland. So he was born in Ireland, lived in England for a while. When he went back to Ireland, he was kind of shocked at all of the problems that were Ireland was ruled by England. We were still a colony, as was Ireland to some extent. So politically, Ireland had zero power whatsoever. They were considered subjects of the English crown.
Like Braveheart?
Somewhat, yeah. England.
To this day, there are still 7 provinces in Ireland that are considered part of
Ireland.
So there still is no united Ireland.
What about the
What's that?
No, I didn't know what that was.
Economically.
No, I couldn't see it.
Economically.
As with most colonies controlled by England, they have what's called a trade deficit, which means they import more than they export. When you do that, you pay for everything you need to buy, and you make no money because you have no products to sell.
Yeah.
England liked to do that because they got to tax all of the imports coming from all of their colonies, and they got to get rich doing it. But all of their colonies
Get rich or die
stay
trying.
poor as a result. So they have no money right now.
I need by sand.
If I say famine, you probably think the Great Potato Famine that wasn't until the 1840s. That's when most of the Irish immigrants came over to the U.S. There was a famine going on, but for different reasons. There were the vast majority of land in Ireland was owned by English landlords, and the Irish natives were tenant farmers on their land, so they had to pay rent to farm the land that centuries before their ancestors had owned. If they couldn't pay their rent, which they couldn't, the landlords could come in and seize their crops, seize their livestock, or kick them off of the land. So if there's anything like potato blight, which was going on at this time, they had a hard time making ends meet. The landlords would come in, seize their crops, seize their livestock, kick them off the land. So very few Irish natives owned land at this point. Working land, more often than not, were tenant farmers and would pay high rent to the English landlords. Socially and religiously, Ireland is a mess. There was what amounts to a civil war going on with religion. The Catholics, Protestants, and the Catholics, or the Catholics and the Protestants, still don't really get along in Ireland to this day. They haven't quite figured it out. This was largely a result of what's called the Protestant ascendancy. It's a time period from about 1691 to 1778.
It's messy, but it's good.
Well, it's still going on. That's what gives us the
Protestant.
IRA and stuff like that.
Nice.
If you remember
Where is it?
from your world history,
Huh.
taking pictures of notes rather than writing.
Yeah, a little bit.
Henry VIII, when he wanted to divorce his wife, the Catholic Church said no, so he said, screw you, I'll start my own religion and I'll be the leader. Remember that vaguely, briefly? That's how the Anglican Church came about. Well, the English were worried that since the vast majority of Catholics, or the vast majority of Irish were Catholics, that they would not feel an allegiance to the English crown. So they passed a whole bunch of laws, penal laws, trying to make life miserable if you were a Catholic, to convince people to convert so that they would swear allegiance to the King of England and his religion. So if you were a Catholic, you could do none of the following. You could not hold public office.
Wow, that sucks.